I still remember the exact moment I realized I wasn't part of my father's real family. I was 13, standing in our driveway with a weekend bag at my feet, watching their minivan pull away toward Disneyland. My father hadn't even looked back. "It's a family moment," he'd explained the night before, not meeting my eyes. "Jake's first Disney trip should be special." I stood there long after the van disappeared, wondering how I could simultaneously be my father's daughter yet not part of his family. The contradiction burned like acid in my chest, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My story begins much earlier, when I was 6 and my world fractured for the first time. It was a Tuesday evening when Mom sat me down at our kitchen table. Her eyes were puffy, her hands trembling slightly as she pushed my hair behind my ear. "Sweetheart, Daddy and I won't be living together anymore." I didn't fully understand then what infidelity meant, only that Dad had hurt Mom so badly that he couldn't live with us. Within months, he'd moved in with Stephanie, the woman he'd been seeing behind Mom's back. The custody arrangement meant I lived primarily with Mom in our small 2-bedroom apartment, but spent holidays and occasional weekends with Dad. Those first visits were awkward but tolerable. Dad would take me to movies or the local pizza place, making strained conversation about school and friends. Everything changed when Jake was born just before my 9th birthday. I still remember holding him for the first time, this tiny red-faced bundle who shared half my DNA, but somehow represented everything that had pulled my father away. Dad beamed with pride, his hand on Stephanie's shoulder as they watched me with my half-brother. "You're a big sister now," Dad said, as if this new role might compensate for everything else I'd lost. From that moment, my visits transformed. I became less a daughter and more an unpaid babysitter. "Could you watch Jake while we run errands?" became the weekend soundtrack. At first, I didn't mind. Jake was cute, and playing with him was easier than navigating uncomfortable conversations with adults who seemed unsure what to do with me. By the time I turned 15, Mom's job transfer meant a difficult decision. She was moving 3 states away for a better position that would finally give us financial stability after years of struggle. The timing coincided with my sophomore year of high school, and switching schools mid-high school seemed disastrous. "You could live with your father during the school year," Mom suggested gently. "You'd still spend summers and holidays with me." It seemed like the logical choice, stay in my school with my friends and graduate with my class. Dad agreed readily, though looking back I wonder if it was more about the child support payments stopping than any desire to have me there. Moving into their suburban home, I quickly realized my place in the hierarchy. My room was the converted office in the basement, functional but separate from the family bedrooms upstairs. Jake, now 6, had the large bedroom next to my father and Stephanie's master suite. "We're so glad to have you here," Stephanie said on my first night, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. She wasn't cruel, just distant, treating me more like an exchange student than family. The pattern was established quickly. I went to school, came home, helped with Jake's homework, and often prepared dinner before Dad and Stephanie returned from work. I became the built-in childcare solution they'd never had to pay for. "You're such a help with Jake," Dad would occasionally say, as if that were my primary value. I tried to tell myself it was temporary just until graduation, but each day of invisibility cut deeper than I could admit. The Disneyland incident was merely the prelude to what happened during my senior year. By then, I'd perfected the art of emotional withdrawal, focusing entirely on maintaining good grades and planning my escape to college. I had scholarships to apply for, essays to write, lifelines to a future where I wouldn't be an afterthought. Jake was now 8 and the undisputed center of my father's universe. I'd accepted my role as the family ghost, drifting through their home, present but never truly seen. Stephanie had warmed to me somewhat over the years, occasionally asking about my college plans or commenting on my academic achievements. It wasn't much, but in the desert of my father's attention, even these small drops of recognition felt significant. Then came the announcement at Sunday dinner, 3 months before my graduation. I have some exciting news, Dad said, grinning as he cut into his roast beef. I've been promoted to regional manager. Stephanie clapped her hands while Jake bounced in his seat. I offered my congratulations, genuinely happy for him despite everything. And to celebrate, he continued, we're taking a family trip to Europe this summer, 2 weeks through London, Paris, and Rome. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. A European trip had been my dream since middle school, when I'd started teaching myself French using library books and free online courses. When in June? I asked, already calculating how it would fit between graduation and the start of college orientation in August. Dad exchanged a quick glance with Stephanie. Actually, we're going in July for Jake's birthday, but about that. He cleared his throat. We thought you'd probably prefer to be with your mum this summer, since it's your last one before college. The silence that followed felt eternal. You're not taking me, I stated flatly. It wasn't a question. Honey, it's just that this is a special trip for Jake's birthday, Stephanie interjected, her voice unnaturally high. And with college starting. So I'm not invited on the family trip, I interrupted, because I'm not family. That's not what we're saying, Dad responded, irritation creeping into his tone. Don't be dramatic. We just thought that I wouldn't want to go to Europe, that I'd rather not see Paris or Rome, that Jake deserves a birthday trip across the ocean, but I didn't even get a cake for my 18th. The dam had broken. 18 years of feeling unwanted came pouring out in a torrent I couldn't control. Do you know what it's like to watch you create this perfect family while making it clear I'm not part of it? To be tolerated but never wanted? To be useful for babysitting but disposable for everything else? Dad's face darkened. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done. What exactly have you done, Dad? You missed my debate finals to attend Jake's soccer game. You forgot my graduation is next month. You've never once asked about my college applications. That's enough. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes jump. I won't be spoken to this way in my own house. You've become so entitled, so ungrateful. Ungrateful? I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. For what? The privilege of being ignored? The honor of being your live-in babysitter? If you're so miserable here, maybe you shouldn't be here at all, he shouted. The room fell silent. Jake stared wide-eyed between us, while Stephanie looked down at her plate. You don't mean that, I said quietly, giving him one last chance to step back from the edge. His jaw tightened. If you can't appreciate what you have here, then maybe you should go stay with one of your friends until you learn some gratitude. I stood slowly, my legs surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. I'll be gone in an hour. I called my best friend Rachel while throwing clothes into my duffel bag. Her parents had always liked me, and they agreed immediately that I could stay with them until graduation. When I came upstairs, Dad was nowhere to be seen. Stephanie stood awkwardly in the living room. He didn't mean it, she offered weakly. He'll calm down by morning. I shouldered my bag. We both know he meant every word. The next day after school, I returned to collect the rest of my belongings. They weren't in my room. Instead, I found cardboard boxes stacked on the front porch, my possessions hastily thrown inside, some books damaged from careless handling. My father had made his statement clear. What hurt most wasn't the exile. It was that in 18 years, I had accumulated so little in his house that everything fit in 3 medium-sized boxes. Mum was furious when she found out, threatening legal action since I was still a minor. But I begged her not to. Just 4 more weeks until graduation, I told her. Then I'll come stay with you until college starts. What I didn't tell her was how liberating it felt to stop pretending. The mask of the dutiful daughter had grown so heavy over the years that removing it, despite the pain, came as a relief. The next 4 years transformed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. That night I left my father's house. After graduating high school, I spent the summer with Mom and my stepfather Richard before heading to college 3 states away. Richard had entered our lives when I was 14, initially just my mother's colleague who helped her navigate her new job. Their friendship had grown gradually into something more, culminating in a small wedding ceremony during my junior year. Unlike my father's instant new family, Mom had insisted on giving me time to adjust, making sure I knew no one would replace me. Richard was everything my father wasn't: attentive, interested, and genuinely supportive. He never tried to be my dad, but he showed up for every milestone that mattered. When I called home during my freshman year breakdown, questioning my choice of major, it was Richard who drove 4 hours at midnight just to take me for breakfast and talk through my options. Family isn't about obligation, he told me over pancakes. It's about choosing each other, every day. During those college years, my father's presence in my life dwindled to almost nothing. The occasional birthday text, usually days late, once a Christmas card addressed to Emily instead of Emma. The final contact came during my junior year when he called, voice slurred with alcohol, to rage about my mother terminating his child support payments now that I was legally an adult. "After everything I did for you," he spat through the phone. I hung up without responding and blocked his number. Life moved forward. I graduated with honors, secured a job at a marketing firm in Seattle, and started building the life I wanted. I made friends who valued me. I learned to trust again through therapy and sheer determination. And then, I met Mark. Our meeting was nothing extraordinary, just two people reaching for the same book at a local bookstore. But what followed was the kind of love that made me understand what I'd been missing. Mark listened when I spoke. He noticed when I was quiet. He made space for my dreams alongside his own. When he proposed after 2 years together, I knew without hesitation that he was my home. The wedding planning began as a joyful blur of decisions and details. Mum and Richard flew out monthly to help, turning what could have been stressful into celebrations. It was during one of these planning weekends that Richard pulled me aside. "Emma, I know I came into your life later than I would have liked," he said, uncharacteristically nervous. "And I've always been careful not to overstep. But I wanted to ask," he cleared his throat, "would you consider letting me walk you down the aisle?" I hugged him so tightly that later he joked I'd cracked a rib. "There's no one else I'd want," I told him, meaning every word. The news of my engagement eventually travelled through family grapevines to my father. His text came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. "Heard about your engagement. Congratulations. I'd like to be part of your big day. It's a father's right to walk his daughter down the aisle." His words, particularly right rather than privilege, told me everything had remained unchanged. I replied simply, "Thank you for the congratulations. Richard will be walking me down the aisle." What followed was a barrage of messages and calls from his unblocked number, vacillating between indignation and wounded pride. How could I deny him this moment? Didn't I understand what this would do to his reputation? Didn't I care about family? I blocked him again without response. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived, handwritten, tear-stained in places. For the first time, my father seemed to recognize the depth of his failures. He acknowledged his neglect, his favoritism, the way he'd allowed me to become invisible in his life. He begged for forgiveness, for another chance, for some role in my wedding. I sat with that letter for days, turning it over in my hands, reading and rereading his words. Part of me, that 6-year-old girl who'd once adored her daddy, wanted to believe him. But the woman I'd become recognized the truth. His regret came not from understanding my pain, but from facing the consequences of his choices. On my wedding day, as Richard stood beside me at the entrance to the garden where Mark waited, I felt a moment of mourning for what might have been. But when Richard squeezed my hand and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, Emma," I knew I had all the family I needed. We walked down the aisle together, not a replacement father and his second-choice daughter, but two people who had chosen each other as family. In that moment, I finally understood. Sometimes the family we create gives us the strength to heal from the family we were born into. As Mark and I exchanged vows, I silently made one more promise to myself. My children would never question their place in my heart. They would never stand in a driveway watching love drive away without them. They would know every day that they belonged. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't romantic ones. Sometimes they're about finding people who see you, truly see you, when those who should have seen you first looked away.
Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more interesting content coming soon.